Good evening. Thank you for joining us for tonight's presentation, Identity Theft, a Matter of When, Not If. I'm David Balin, and will serve as your host for tonight's program. With me today is our presenter, H. Roy Bhiro, U.S. Air Force retired, mortgage banker with Prime Lender. Roy's presentation will last approximately 30 to 45 minutes and be followed by a question and answer session. To ask a question, click on the chat button on the small Join.me toolbar found at the top of your screen. The balloon-shaped circle, which is the second one from the left next to the phone. I ask that you keep your questions general in nature, as we will not be able to address individual concerns during the presentation. Roy has 11 years experience as a mortgage banker. He also has more than 25 years experience in training and education. He currently works for the U.S. Army, Air Force, National Guard, and Reserve units in New York and New Jersey in the areas of financial literacy. With that, let me welcome Roy.
Thank you so much, David. Ladies and gentlemen, let me first say thank you so much to David and Personal Wealth Strategies for allowing me to come out and present to you this evening. Today's topic is very, very important to all of us because at the rate at which identity theft and company personal information is being violated, they say it's about every 6 seconds someone is a victim. So it is really not a matter of when, it's a matter of if. And so today's presentation is really to help you identify some of the areas and things that you can do to try to help limit identity theft, and also what it looks like, who participate in this type of endeavor, and what you can do to help remedy it should it happen to you. As David said, I am an Air Force veteran of 21 years. I've been in the mortgage banking industry for a little over 11 years, and I've been in the education business for about 25 years. I currently do a lot of educational programs for people in the real estate industry, banking industry, and also because of my military background, I do a lot of pro bono work for military organizations. I don't work for them, but I do a free seminar and education for them. So that's my background in a nutshell. So what is identity theft? So most people know what it looks like, but here's the real definition, right? It's the unauthorized use of your personal identification information to either access or create accounts for goods, services, or money. Most often we associate it with credit cards being stolen or credit cards created falsely and we're billed, right? The main thing is we all need to be aware of it, and we need to be concerned primarily because of the responsibility. The law basically says that we are responsible. So if someone were to go out and create a credit card or credit account in your name, you're technically responsible. So you need to pay attention and also try to minimize those opportunities from happening. The other thing is credit violations and identity theft really affect you personally and can also affect you professionally. So from your credit and also the ability to sometimes seek employment or the ability to even function in your business. So you need to basically be protective of your credit and your reputation. The forms that the different information that makes up personal identity information are highlighted in blue. Those are the areas that's really most significant where most crime happens. If you take the measures to protect those information, Social Security, driver's license, date of birth, and mother's maiden name, you'll minimize most opportunities from individuals taking advantage of your information. Recently, there's a lot more identity theft information in the medical arena, biometrics, medical insurance, and in addition to that, the financial accounts. Your personal identification information, once it's compromised, it's out there, and it takes a lot to really reel that back in and to recover. The main areas that you will see these violations really affect you are new lines of credit, mortgage accounts, equity lines, sometimes on your property, sometimes on new properties that the perpetrator will purchase. The checking account, liquid assets, sometimes they will even go after your 401k accounts. In other cases, sometimes they will use your identity information to become a tenant, sign a lease, apply for new utilities for a new property or residence that they may be living in. And of course, like I said recently, the medical aspect as far as billing and your identity. Some other areas that really affect folks these days that you don't often think about are the government areas. So for example, folks will use your ID to create services that they get from the government, such as Social Security or Medicare. And sometimes they would also use your information to redirect where your checks go when you file your taxes. So most recent scams with the IRS also are impacting the IRS returns of your monies. So you need to be very vigilant as far as who's doing your taxes and who you're giving access to your personal information. A lot of local violations is happening also when folks just have your name and your address. If they get stopped for a ticket, they claim that hey, I don't have any identification, but they will give your name and your address. Eventually, a ticket will come to your house, but you didn't even participate in it, or you weren't even in the vehicle at the time. So be mindful, like when you discard your bills or your address information, just make sure you shred that information. You just necessarily throw it out in the trash. This chart that you're seeing basically shows where the most violations are occurring today. Credit card is number one with 28%, and then phone utility type fraud is about 19%. But the bottom line is there's no limit today because of technology, how these folks can use your information, and they don't have to be local. They can be across the street or they can be across the country. One of the keys to preventing this is to look for clues, right? So often we get so busy paying our bills, making sure that we take care of our own financial responsibilities, that we don't really pay attention often if a bill is missing, because sometimes we have multiple bills that's coming in, student loans, etc., right? So we need to really start paying attention to what is happening internally when we get our bills, when we get our statements. We need to read them. Take a look at who's sending you bills also. Sometimes it may not even be a debt that you may have incurred or even applied for. When you start getting calls from bill collectors, don't ignore them. Sometimes you just want to take the call and identify who these individuals are and what they're calling about, because sometimes it just may be the tip of a problem that is about to start for you. In 2015, between January and April 28th, we had over 270 breaches of identity theft resources being stolen. Most of these folks who participate in this are going after corporate type breaches, but because we do business with many different type of organizations, our information is exposed. So sometimes they don't go after you as the individual, because if they were able to get into one company, they'll be able to access thousands of records. So looking at this, just in 4 months, we have almost half of the breaches that we had last year already. Over 102 million records have been violated. So this type of crime is not going away. It's only going to get worse. And we need to create a partnership to be able to protect our information. We need to be more vigilant with who we share information with, and also be able to put rules in place to protect our information. Who these thieves are. Years ago, it used to be a lot of folks involved in drugs and so forth, but today, involved in drugs, but it's organized crime, and it's also people who are just savvy with a computer. They could be miles away, thousands of miles away, different countries, and they look for means to be able to get access to corporate accounts. They also will infect your computers and your devices with viruses that will allow them to share access to your device and computers. So you need to make sure that you have some type of security measure to protect those electronic devices. One set of folks that most people don't think about are family members. Often, family members take advantage, especially if they're elderly. You have grandchildren who are taking advantage of grandparents' information because they don't think that maybe they are able to keep up with their day-to-day mails and so forth. So if you do have children who are taking care of grandparents and so forth, it's a good opportunity to sit down and have a conversation, not only with children, but also with parents, to let them know that, hey, these type of things can happen, and also what are the steps that they can take to minimize it from happening and not sharing credit cards and personal information with anyone that they come in contact with. So here are some of the ways that thieves will normally obtain your information. Aside from a stolen wallet and going through your mail and dumpster, there's something called shoulder surfing. It's whereby somebody is just within earshot of your device or listening to you on the telephone and basically listening for information that you may be sharing. You could be at an airport sharing information, sometimes security access to your house or to your computer or to files. There are folks always listening. So you just need to be careful, regardless of where you're at, look around where you're at, and be mindful of people who are either following you or standing close enough to where they can observe or see whatever you do in your computer or smart devices. There's some things that you have no control over, data breaches at major companies and so forth. The only thing that you can do is you can partner with companies that offer protective services where you pay a service and they will protect your information. So should something happen, a data breach, they're very reactive in helping you to recover and to be able to minimize the amount of damage. Here are some of the scams that are most prevalent. The Nigerian scam is really something that started in Nigeria about 10 years ago. The 419 scam also is part of the Nigerian scam, whereby they send you an email or some type of solicitation telling you that they need help or you have won some money, and in order for you to recover the money, you need to send them something. There is overpayment scam that talks about that you overpaid for something and they need to send you a refund. So in order to send you a refund, they need your account information. The bottom line is, for all these scams to work, they will prey rather on your kindness, or they will try to get you to feel sorry for them, right? So what you need to do is don't share any information with anyone, especially if no one has ever asked you in a professional capacity to share that type of information. So, for example, the IRS will never call you and ask you for your social security number. Your bank will never call you and ask you to repeat your account number, right? So don't share that type of information, especially if you haven't originated a call. For these things to work, you really have to let your guards down, and you also have to be complicit to it to feel like you're doing some good to help these folks. The bottom line is take a name and number if you think that there's a cause that you want to help. Take a name and number, go to the scam websites that's out there, and research it first before you participate and you share that information. The FTC has a great website that has up-to-date information on scams that's available, and this information will basically keep you from being a prey or falling of crimes. So phishing scams is another type of scam where folks are just fishing for information, right? So they will use the email or telephone. Sometimes they will just contact you and say, hey, your account is being shut down because we don't have, someone has tried to access your account and we don't have proper credentials. Can you identify certain information about your account? All these things that they do are really designed for them to get information from you to fill in missing or blanks that they already have. So they may already have information in you, such as your credit card number, the name of your bank account, but they're missing the PINs or they're missing some part of the equation for them to be able to access your information. So be mindful of that. Here's what a phishing email looks like. A lot of these emails do have telltale signs that they're fake. Sometimes the logos are incorrect or they are of different colors. They don't match the real logo of the company that you do business with. And you'll find sometimes that if you look at the email addresses, they don't necessarily go back to your bank. So just take a look at these things, read them through, and if ever you have a question about an email that you have, you can always go to the FTC website and do a query about a scam that email is trying to perpetuate. And most of the time, they have up-to-date information about these type of events. So mortgage scams starts with loan modifications or foreclosure help or foreclosure prevention, where folks basically try to target you to try and help you. And the idea is for them to either get sums of money from you. Sometimes they ask for 2-3 months of payment so that they will try to lower your payments or lower your interest rate or to prevent a foreclosure from happening so that it doesn't ruin your credit. At the end of the day, the only people who can really truly do a loan modification for you starts with your bank. So if you're intending on doing anything that has to do with a mortgage, start with your lender or go through a nonprofit organization that is federally approved or funded. So insurance scams are the next big thing today because it is very easy to perpetuate and it causes the most damage also to you as a consumer. So folks basically use your information, they get tests, they give your name and address, and before you know it, that information is then attached to your medical records. It really complicates things for you later on when either you need to go get medication and you find out that your medical account has been exhausted, or you find out that the medication that you're taking or asking for is now conflicting with some other medication that has already been prescribed that really is not yours. It's some imposter. So be careful and protect your medical information. Even when you share your information with your doctor's office, ensure that you're having a conversation with your healthcare practitioners about what they are doing to protect your information so it doesn't fall in the wrong hands. And then the third and the final one there is cheap prescription medication overseas or online. Be mindful where you go. If you do shop online, use the HTTPS symbol in the URL whenever you're ordering merchandise, whether it's medication or anything else online. because the S basically signifies it is a secure site. So skimming often happens at these type of locations, convenience stores, gas stations, restaurants, right? And it's basically folks that would install a device that would capture the information on your credit card or debit card. The key here, is basically to be vigilant. There's really no way to protect yourself from this. The thing that I do is I use one credit card for external transactions and one credit card for online transactions. I go anywhere from buying gas or going to a restaurant, I just use one credit card. So should something happen, I know exactly which credit card it happens to. And if it happened online, I know which credit card it is. So I only use two credit cards, basically to minimize the ability of those folks having access to most of my financials. So trying to stop or limit fraud, here's some information for you to help you. So first of all, you should definitely evaluate your credit report at least once a year. And you're entitled to get a free copy of your credit report through annualcreditreport.com. You can also call them to receive a copy. And you have that phone number right there, 877-322-8228. And one of the recommendation to stop the flow of junk mails or stop the credit bureaus from selling your information is calling and opting out from their lead generation program. So in addition to the credit bureaus actually making money from vendors for providing the credit reports and the scoring, they also sell your information to folks who are looking to conduct business with folks who are participating or engaging in such type of transaction. So for example, if you were to apply for a mortgage, immediately after you apply for a mortgage, you're going to get some random phone calls where folks are going to be talking to you about mortgages. And the reason being is the credit bureau has sold your information to people who are looking to do business with folks who are looking for a mortgage. Similarly, it works for auto dealerships. So if you go to a dealer and you have your credit ran, there will be other people, either in the used car business or new car business, who will purchase that lead from the credit bureaus. And that's how your information is being passed along. Not only your name, but your phone number, and also sometimes your address, depends on what they pay for. So to shut that down, to stop that type of activity, you can call the credit bureaus, and that works for all three credit bureaus: Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. The other thing you can do to help minimize is really put your wallet on a diet, as they say, right? Especially men, we carry sometimes a really thick wallet. We have everything in there. But bottom line is you don't need your Social Security card to walk around anymore with it. Sometimes parents carry their children's Social Security information and all that in their wallet. The key is you should really carry a driver's license and maybe one or two credit cards. Try to minimize your personal information and maybe information on who to contact, God forbid something were to happen, or if you get hurt, right? Or maybe your medical insurance card. One thing you want to be careful about medical insurance cards is they have a lot of your personal information on it, to include your Social Security number. So be careful how much of personal identification information you carry in your wallet. One other place, sometimes we take our car to go get a detail. We don't really pick up or clean up in the car before. We'll be thinking that, hey, we're paying for service, so someone else will clean up, but we leave. I know I'm guilty of leaving the receipts from either restaurants or from the gas station in the car. But what I do now that I've learned about these techniques that folks are using is I will grab all my receipts from the car before I take the car to get it clean, just to make sure that folks are not keeping information on me or having access to my accounts. Sometimes we leave information. We go to the doctor and we may leave a test slip or or something that we have from the doctor's office that has information about us. Be mindful what is in your car when you take your car to get it clean, because all that information, when it's put together, can really create a very strong picture of you, to where folks can take advantage of your identity and your personal information. So to protect your checkbook, start with protecting your Social Security card and your Social Security number. Don't carry blank checks with you. Be mindful, and if you do carry your checkbook with how many checks you have or what the number is of the last check you wrote. Sometimes I know clients and folks who write checks and they don't really pay attention, and they don't even balance their checkbook. Be mindful of that. Don't put yourself in that type of position. And if you're writing checks, make sure you use a real pen. Today's technology has allowed them to create pens with erasers, where you can actually erase the ink. So make sure that whatever you're using, whatever instruments you're using to write, the information cannot be erased. So even when you write a check, someone can't go back and change the amount of money that you've written the check for. And of course, shred all unused checks or deposit slips also. And be mindful of your ATM card, your ATM receipts. Finally, monitor your monthly statements for charges. I know for a very long time, I would get the bill and just pay it and not really pay much attention to it. Do take a look at the monthly charges periodically to see what is being charged in your credit card statements, just to make sure that it's actually your charges. Because this is another way that sometimes people will get your information but make very small charges to where they're basically flying under the radar. And if you do, let's say, 10, 15, 20 charges a month, another charge in there you may not pay attention to, and it's $20 every month. And so before you know it, it's $240 a year, and then there may be another charge of maybe it's $500, $600 before you know it. So just be careful. Debt or credit, so you can use debit card or you can use credit cards. The jury is really out on both as far as what is safer. It just depends on what the credit limit is on the credit card and really how much money you have in that account that a debit card has access to, right? So I don't know too many people who just have a debit card with a limited amount. And most of the time it's whatever money that's put into that account, either via a monthly or weekly paychecks, or sometimes folks have an account that they have for monthly expenditures that they just deposit. Either way, it can be a substantial amount that if someone have access to it, it can really hurt you financially. So you just need to be mindful of that. And then your credit card, the limit is the limit. So if you have a high limit and someone have access to it, you could really see some damage there. Just if something should happen, take steps immediately to try and fix it and to report it. Protect your mail. Don't use joint mailboxes, and don't use community mailboxes. Make sure that if you're not going to be home or you're going to be on vacation, that you notify the post office to hold your mail, or you have someone who is trustworthy to be able to handle your mail or pick up your mail for you. Of course, shred and opt out. One of the things that will cut down those pre-approved mailings that you get is calling that 800 number to opt out, which will protect you for at least 5 years. So every 5 years you'd have to do it. But it'll certainly reduce the amount of junk mails that you'll get or pre-approved offers. Shoulder surfing and telephone solicitation, there's so much you can do. You just need to be mindful of your surroundings. If you see folks who are around you and looking over your shoulder all the time based on what you're doing, just be protective. Maybe stop what you're doing or walk away. And of course, never share your social security number in a public place. So your smart devices in your computer is one of the easiest ways for folks to be able to access your information, right? And so if your antivirus or your security software is outdated in your computer, that would be the smartest investment that you can make to protect your information immediately today. Because there's a lot of information on your computer that if it's put together, a piece here and a piece there, will really create a strong personal information that anyone can really take, use, or abuse. So defending your information is getting harder only because of a social media network, and most of us have some type of social media or networking type organization that we participate in, either for personal or for professional reasons, right? I can pretty much assure anyone today that I can go to one of 3 websites and I can get some simple information: your legal name, your address and phone number, possibly your email address, and also your date of birth. And these websites are all available to you. It's no mystery. So you can go to Facebook and any of the social media sites, and often you'll see folks list their actual birthdays, or right after their birthday, they would post pictures about celebrating their 20th, 30th, 50th birthdays, right? So be mindful of that, because there's so many people who have access to that information. You're basically giving it away. Folks on social media don't need to know what your actual birthday is. One rule that I use 2 birthdays in social medias. I use January 1st of the year after I was born, and I use the month of my daughter's birthday just because it's a lot easier for me to remember what month it is, and the first of that month. So, and my actual year that I was born. And this is just my way of protecting my information on social media. So if you were to go and look me up anywhere in social media, you will never really find my actual information. But the reason that I do it that way is that if something were to happen, I know exactly where the information came from or where the breach happened. I can narrow it down very quickly. So one of them I use for professional, and one of them I use for social type activities. So that's how I break it down. But just be careful of what type of information you share online and what information you share in chat rooms, because you never know who's listening and who's keeping or securing that data. We talked about HTTPS symbol on your URL. Is basically a secure way to pay your bills or handle financial transactions. You should not ever exchange your personal information on a website that doesn't start with HTTPS. And of course, passwords, it starts with the access to your internet service at home. So it's through your router or your wireless service. Just make sure that the passwords are really strong, that protects you, and I would recommend that you change them. I would say often, and I think you should use your better judgment as far as how often you can keep up with it without creating an issue for yourself. And of course, you shouldn't keep any of your password information on your computer. So peer-to-peer safeguard, a lot of folks share files and they download music and then share music and so forth. Just be careful. Make sure that you have a separate computer that you do that. You don't have your financial information on the same computer that you share information with folks. And that's just to minimize, because once you give someone access to your computer, if they are savvy, they can really have access to everything on your computer. So it's really best not to give access to information in your computer, period. Just say no to that. Areas that are beyond your control, of course, I talked about earlier, is the data breach and personal information file with companies, banks that you do business with. It's really hard to to control that. But the other thing also is the transferable information, flash drives or portable hard drives that we carry, and sometimes our laptop, right? Because we take our laptop with us, we leave it in the car and so forth, and someone breaks in, steals our laptop or portable devices, they basically have access to information. So just make sure that A, those things are protected heavily with a lot of security, and B, you don't keep too much personal information on it so that if they have access to it, they basically have control of your life. Here's some phone numbers. Here's some stats on breaches that happened in 2013 and where those numbers are trending today. We already have 240 already just in 4 months compared to 764 breaches in 2014. So as you can see, those numbers are really escalating very, very quickly. 83.2 million in 2014, Wario up to 102 million already in just 4 months of 2015. So as you can see, this problem is not going away, and you have to take personal responsibility to try and mitigate and stop it. So be proactive. Order a copy of your credit report at least once a year. You can only stagger your request with the different credit bureaus so that you can see what's happening throughout the year. So you're able to get one free copy of your credit report from each of the credit bureaus. There are 3 of them, so you can get one every quarter, and that will last you pretty much for the entire year. Review your credit carefully, know what information is there, and know who you're doing business with. Also know what your credit limits are and what the balances are on a monthly basis so you can really understand what your statements are and whether the payments that you're making are really impacting your account. And below, I gave you a screenshot of the information to the credit bureaus again that you can access for your free credit report. Extra precaution, if you're going to be traveling and so forth, you can always put a freeze. If you're in the military and you're serving overseas, definitely put a freeze on your credit account so that folks don't access it while you're overseas. And if you are an elderly, you have elderly family members, it is not a bad idea to look into putting a freeze on their accounts or to force a phone call authorization before credit is dispensed. So it's just a couple of things you can do to try and help protect yourself and the elderly. If you're a victim, there are lots of help available, but the question is, what do you do first, right? So the first thing that you should do as soon as you identify or figure out that there's something of fraud being perpetuated is you need to contact the credit bureau, close the affected accounts, and you must file a police report. If you're in town, out of town, it doesn't matter. Wherever you're at, file a police report at that location as soon as you find out it has occurred. It's really important that when you file the report, you get some information from the police department as far as when you can get a copy of the report and how you can access the report that you have filed. Because you will need that. That will be a critical piece in trying to not hold you accountable for the fraud that has been perpetuated against you. So I talked about FTC earlier, Federal Trade Commission. I gave you here their website and some links to access their information and to also see information about identity theft. There's a resource center that's available. They have an 800 number, no cost assistance to you. So God forbid something were to happen and you're in a panic mode, you don't know what to do. Here's some resources. You can reach out to these folks and they can help you. And that concludes the presentation. Any questions?
All right. Well, thank you very much. That was a great presentation. I'm going to make sure all my clients take a look at this. And we do have some questions. Bear with me while I open this up. Okay. First question, what is the best way to prevent against credit card theft?
So that's a difficult thing to do, right? Preventing someone from stealing your information. No matter sometimes what actions you take, you never know. These folks, especially if you travel quite a bit, folks can pick your pocket and those type of things. But beyond being um, protective that way, I think the number one thing is to not be careless, not leaving your stuff or your information in hotel rooms, in your car, as you go to the gym. Um, just leaving your information or your access to your credit cards or your wallet or purse um, just openly. I think that's the first thing you need. You need to be security conscious to make sure that you don't leave your personal information available and where other folks will have access to it easily.
Okay. Are there certain types of vendors, for example, subway fare machines, restaurants with iPad registers, etc., where using a credit card is unsafe?
So it's really difficult because you don't know who's working at a particular vendor or a particular company, right? So um, criminals today, they have people who work both on the inside and people who work on the outside. So what they do, it's very easy. The bank ATMs today, right? So we trust banks because we go to a bank, we think we can slide a card and access our money. But there are people who are going to those ATMs and putting devices, installing devices on the inside of the machines to be able to encrypt or collect encryption on your credit card. So, to say that one type of business has more risk versus another, today's thieves and people who perpetuate these type of crimes are very savvy technologically and they have the means. So sometimes they're working with people from the inside and sometimes they're doing it from the outside without any help. So it's really hard to say that a particular type of business, may be more apt to, or, where you could encounter these type of crime.
Okay, great. This next question, I think, is very timely, asking about when looking at a monthly statement, how do you verify a transaction is yours or not yours, especially if you know you shopped at a particular store? And I'll throw one there. With the breaches that we've seen at places like Target, Home Depot, and Staples, these are places where people shop regularly. How do we know which is ours and which is not?
Yeah, so because of technology and because of the flexibility that we have today, we don't practice the old school method of validating. I remember my dad used to say, hang on to the receipt, put it in a shoe box, and when the bill comes, match it up, right? So that's the old school way of doing it, and it's really hard. But today, because of technology, we can really take a picture, right, of a receipt, and it's in our phone, and then at the end of the month, we can just delete it, right? But it's another quick way of bouncing up and matching things up. It takes time, right? But there's no simple answer. If you want to protect your information, it requires effort. Absent of that, then you need to pay for the services through these identity protection companies that's out there that market those services. Pay for that type of service where, then I don't have to do all these type of menial tasks to just try and balance my accounts or balance my checkbook or making sure that the check that I wrote is for the right amount, right? So somewhere in between, you have to decide what's right for you based on your time, your resources that you have available, and how much money are we talking about.
Yeah, it's a great point. You and I grew up in an era where we were taught to balance our checkbook. I'm amazed at how few people do any kind of reconciliation, and whether it be the old pen and pencil method or using a software package like Quicken, or as you suggest, taking a picture of receipts with your phone, you got to do something to make sure, because although it's not the topic of the presentation here, I can't tell you how many bank errors you find where they just charge your account for an extra zero on the end of a check that's cleared or something that's not yours. It happens. It happens to everybody.
It happened recently to me, actually.
Okay.
So recently I paid a bill. I got a bill and I paid it. And not knowing to me, I overpaid the bill by 21 cents.
Okay.
Right? So I got a check from the bank for 21 cents. So I'm trying to figure out, how did I overpay a bill for 21 cents? Well, I didn't overpay the bill. They overcharged me in the bill. But because I didn't pay attention to the bill, I paid the bill like everybody else, right? So they caught their error, and then they sent me a check for 21 cents. So I still have the check. It's been like 2 months now. I'm not cashing it. I'm keeping it.
Let's see. When internal networks such as university portals, company portals, within internal networks, is it wise to suppress information such as address, photo, phone numbers, so others in a company cannot view it?
So this is a personal choice, right? And it depends on what the company policies are and what is the intent and the distribution use of the information. So some company has like a intranet where it's just for corporate personnel. You have a say what information is on there, whether it's your picture or limited information, your cell phone numbers, etc., right? So you have some control over that. For the internet, the information that the consumer, the public will see, your company has a policy on what information will go on the internet, right? So where consumers can access. So there are some controls, but at the end of the day, common sense rules, right? Never put information out there that you don't want someone to have access
to. Good advice. Another question we have, when asking for credit report, your credit rating goes down. How can I remedy this while protecting my information?
So that's not an exactly factual statement. So your credit scores can be affected when credit scores are pulled. And it depends who's pulling it and the purpose for which it's being pulled, right? So let's talk about them real quick. If you contact the credit bureaus and ask for a copy of your free credit report, your annual report, there is no hit or no effect on your credit score. So let's say now you go and you apply for a car. If you were to apply to like 20 car companies within a 10 to 15 day period, it will count as one pull. The way it will affect you is while you're applying for the car, you also went and applied for a mortgage for a new house for the new car, and then you went to Macy's or your favorite store, Lord & Taylor, wherever you shop, and you apply for that type of credit. Those are all different types of credit, and each one of those credit will affect you negatively. But if you were to, on a large ticket item like a house or a car, if you were to have those pulls done within a 15-day period, it will count as one pull and will not affect you negatively.
There you go. It's good information. Let's see, we have one more question here. If your debit card is compromised and the bank offers to investigate, is that a good replacement for a police report?
There is no replacement for a police report, especially if you don't want to be liable, right? So the first step to protect yourself to say that this is a legitimate claim is you must file a police report. Keep in mind that there are consequences for filing a false police report, right? That's another crime of itself, right? So in order for you to be able to prove that the account was not yours, you have to start with a police report, filing a police report, notifying the credit bureaus, you taking all legitimate steps to stop the perpetrators, right? You can't allow it to be charged up, let's say $5,000, $10,000, and then claiming, oops, it's not mine, after 2 months, right? So it's really hard for anyone to believe that. But does something like that happen? Yeah, I'm sure. But the key is what steps are you taking, and is it legitimate? Are you taking legitimate steps through legitimate agencies and organizations who has a responsibility to help police this type of crime? And the police is one of those authorities. So you need to start there.
Very good. This has been great information. I really appreciate it. I have one question that I'm going to ask, a final question, because we've been focused on how to prevent identity theft. But in terms of the protective services, and the company that comes to mind is LifeLock, because I know they do a lot of advertising. How effective is that as an alternative or as a supplement to the things that we've been speaking about?
So it's not an alternative, right? It's a team approach and a team concept. You need to think of it as a team concept. You can only do so much. And then if you have an agency like LifeLock or security type companies like that, that's another part of the equation. And then what you're doing personally to protect your information doesn't fall in the wrong hand. That's another part of it, right? And then the agencies and organizations you share information with, are you having the conversation with them about their security strategies and what they're doing to protect your information, right? Often we go to a doctor's office or wherever, and we very willingly hand our information over without ever asking the question, right? Like surprised, oh geez, I never knew that would have happened. Well, these type of people who do these type of crimes, they really don't care. Their bit is about getting access to information and then selling that information, right? So we have to take an active role. We just can't be a bystander, and then we can't push it all over to the security company that we paid and just say, okay, I'm just going to give my information out, right? So it has to be a comprehensive approach, but it has to be a team approach. We have to take ownership first, and then we have, for those things that we don't have control over, partner with those type of security type agencies to help us.
That's great. Boy, this has been some great information, and I know in your work as a mortgage banker, you must see people who have gotten hit with some identity theft. Sometimes I'm going to guess you're the one who's providing the information that their credit has been damaged. So I thank you as a valuable resource to myself and to my clients for coming in today and doing this presentation. On the screen right now, you have Roy's contact information. If you do have further questions, you can always contact Roy directly. You can also contact our office where we have Roy's information and can help direct you to his services, both as an expert on identity theft, but also as a mortgage banker as well. You'll keep in mind that the recording of this session will be posted on our website in about a week's time. And I do suggest to anybody who's listening that you get your friends, get your relatives to listen in on this, because this has been some important information that you don't want to learn through experience. Roy, thank you again for coming in tonight, and I wish everyone a good night.
Thank you so much, David. Good night.